How's everyone doing? My name is Jumpy, and today I've got two movies to talk about. Let's start with The French Dispatch. Wes Anderson. Oh, Wes Anderson. I was not a fan for a long time. The first of his directorial efforts I saw when I was younger was The Royal Tenenbaums, and then Rushmore not too long after. I borrowed both from my older brother, and I didn't hate either, but I didn't really care for them either. After that, I still gave Bottle Rocket a chance, which is his first movie. I remember the characters being likable screw-ups and enjoying it more than the others that I'd seen, but not enough that I wanted to watch any other Wes Anderson movies. My brother was clearly the Anderson fan between us. When the Darjeeling Limited came out a few years later in 2007, he asked me to go with him to the theater. Of course, I wasn't interested, but he guilted me into it. And he knew exactly how to do just that. He brought up The Hills Have Eyes 2, which I made him go see with me. That was the sequel to the far superior 2005 remake. And god damn it, I owed him one, didn't I? I wasn't as hard on The Hills Have Eyes 2 as some people, but I can't defend that fucking movie, and it's not something I ever plan on revisiting now. So we went and saw The Darjeeling Limited, and I didn't like it at all. And it was easily my least favorite Anderson movie that I'd seen so far, by far. I have no idea how I'd feel about that movie now, but it kept me from giving Anderson another chance for a very long time. But hey, 15 years later in 2022, I figured I liked Bottle Rocket enough back then, and maybe my tastes have changed on the others. So why not start over and rewatch the very first movie of his that I ever saw, The Royal Tenenbaums. This time around, I thought it was great. It's very funny and has a lot of genuine emotion in it. It resonated with me differently now for a few reasons. Like, I've tried both successfully and unsuccessfully to reconnect with friends at one time or another when I messed up. Also, I watched it after my father passed away, and we weren't the closest. Otherwise, there's quite a few differences in our relationship versus the movie's portrayal of a father and son relationship, but I connected with the movie differently now compared to when I was a kid and saw it for the first time. A few months after that, I watched The French Dispatch, which is another Anderson-directed movie. This one was released in 2021. I also really enjoyed it quite a bit. It's been a while, and I was in the mood to rewatch that one again for a full review, so here we are. It's an anthology movie that takes place in France in 1975. In it, there's an American magazine called The French Dispatch, which is made up of articles of expatriate writers. The founder and editor, Arthur Howitzer Jr., played by Bill Murray, passes away at the age of 75. His will states that the publication will be shut down upon his death. The movie brings to life the final issue of the magazine. There are 3 main stories, as well as a short travelogue section featuring Owen Wilson on a bicycle. The first main article in the movie is written by Tilda Swinton. It's about an artist named Moses Rosenthaler, played by Benicio del Toro, who's in prison for committing a double homicide. His muse is a prison guard named Simone, played by Léa Seydoux, and he does an abstract painting of her. Next we meet Julian Cadazio, played by Adrian Brody, who's an art dealer that was imprisoned for tax evasion. He sees Moses' painting and offers to buy it. When he gets out of prison, he starts creating buzz for Moses' work. The second story is written by Lucinda Crements, played by Frances McDormand. It's about a college revolutionary named Zeffirelli, played by Timothée Chalamet, and his friends including Juliet, played by Lena Kudry. The last article is written by Roebuck Wright, played by Jeffrey Wright. He's having dinner with the police commissaire when the commissaire's son is kidnapped. The movie is very stylized. Most of it is in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and large portions are in black and white. There's so much attention to detail in the shot compositions. There are so many great moments, like they use a younger actor from Moses in flashbacks showing him before he ended up in prison. In his cell, the younger Moses actor pours a drink, and then the door opens off screen and he gets up. Benicio del Toro walks in and sits down in the seat. Then the young Moses puts a necklace on del Toro, and then the younger actor leaves the room and del Toro drinks from the glass. Sometimes a set will disassemble in the middle of a scene, or an action sequence will be animated because that moment was published as a comic strip in the magazine. How The French Dispatch makes me feel reminds me of a 1958 Japanese film called The Ballad of Narayama. That movie is also very artificial in its visuals. and it constantly reminded me that I was watching a movie. But that didn't take away from the genuine emotions that film had, and I could still connect with the story. My favorite segment of The French Dispatch is the final one, and it worked the best dramatically. The movie is also very funny. It has a lot of dry humor, with some obvious silly jokes and slapstick thrown in, and a lot of it works for me. Some highlights are Moses' parole hearing, as well as the entire big showing for his newest work. There's also Zeffirelli having a conversation with both Lucinda and Juliet at the same time, with neither responding. One of my favorite lines is Arthur's advice that he gives, which is quote unquote, just try to make it sound like you wrote it that way on purpose. The movie has a lot of information happening very quickly, and a lot of names, so it can be easy to miss a few details, but it's not too hard to figure out the main points of what's going on. And I will say the second story about the student revolutionaries is the least interesting, but it still has a lot of really good things in it. I'm giving The French Dispatch an 8 out of 10. I respect all of the effort that went into it, and it's just an entertaining movie as well. I prefer The Royal Tenenbaums as far as my more recent Wes Anderson watches go, and I'd start with that one over The French Dispatch. The Royal Tenenbaums is more accessible because it's stylish and artistic, but not as over the top in how artificial it is, and it's not an anthology. And now, let's get on to my second film for this video. Evil Dead. Oh, Evil Dead. I've been a fan for a long time. I started watching this movie series when I was a kid. The first movie, The Evil Dead, was released in 1981. Some college kids go to a cabin in the woods and they inadvertently unleash demonic spirits that possess and kill them. It's good, but I gotta say, I don't like it as much as the others. It's just some friends making a low-budget movie, and it's charming, but the second movie really improves upon it. Evil Dead 2: Dead by Dawn followed in 1987, and it picks up immediately where the first one ended. I revisited this movie recently, and it's still one of my favorite movies ever. It's a horror comedy that works as both. There's some really creepy, quiet moments, and the suspense is well done. The comedy comes from the absurdity of the situation and the slapstick and over-the-top violence, and Bruce Campbell is wonderful as the main character Ash. The third Evil Dead movie is called Army of Darkness, and it was released in 1992. I also rewatched this one, and it's still my favorite movie in the series. It is a contender for one of my top 10 favorite movies that I've ever seen. I'm not going to go into any details about the plot, but it's almost a pure comedy at this point, with barely any horror, and it's so entertaining. It's filled with some of the funniest one-liners ever, and the visual gags are hilarious. I saw Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness so many times when I was a kid, but neither was the movie that spent the most time in my DVD player. That honor goes to Bring It On. I watched Bring It On once and then somehow lost the disc. It just seemed to disappear into thin air. Years later, my DVD player started making a weird grinding noise. I had never had any issues with it before that. My dad took it to a local store to have someone look at it and figure out what the problem was. And they found the Bring It On disc inside the DVD player. What I believe happened was that I think I left the disc in the DVD player because I wanted to watch the special features later on, and then just forgot about it. Maybe I bumped it at some point, I don't know. But the next time I tried to turn on the player and opened up the tray to put another movie in, the Bring It On disc must have gotten knocked loose off the tray and fell to the side, inside. And then whenever I would have checked the Bring It On case after that, if the disc wasn't in there, I just wouldn't have known where else to look. Shit, I'm too far off topic. Perhaps the DVD player got possessed by the Evil Dead and ate the disc to torture me by keeping me from learning all of the behind-the-scenes secrets of a movie I thought was alright and not nearly as good as Army of Darkness. I don't know. Maybe I'll revisit Bring It On someday and do a video. The next movie in the Evil Dead series came a couple decades later in 2013, and it's simply titled Evil Dead. It's a weird beast. It's a remake of the first movie, but with new characters, and it's set in the same timeline as the original series. I didn't see it for the first time until several years after its release, and I enjoyed it quite a bit at first, but I really loved it even more after a second viewing. Just be warned that it's very gross and graphically violent. Sure, Evil Dead 2 had a lot of blood, but here, despite being so over the top, everything looks like it hurts and can be hard to watch at times. But I greatly prefer the 2013 movie to the original. I just don't love it as much as Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness. There's also a TV series called Ash vs. Evil Dead. I watched the first season, and I believe that I saw it before the second season was out. And I really liked it, I just haven't gotten around to watching the second or third seasons. I really need to sit down and start over from the beginning at some point. So now we get to the newest entry in the series, Evil Dead Rise from 2023. Of course, I was hyped and had been looking forward to seeing it for a long time. The movie was originally planned to go straight to streaming in 2022, but it did so well at a test screening that it got a theatrical release first. Since I never go to the theaters anymore, it was a grueling wait for what was ultimately the same experience, but it's still cool for people who wanted to see the terror on the big screen. The only things I knew going into this one are that it's very bloody and gross, that it has a new setting for the series and takes place in a high-rise apartment building in a city, and that it has an all-new cast of characters. I didn't even watch the trailer until after I'd already saw the movie, and I avoided reading anything else about it. The movie was written and directed by Lee Cronin, and this is his second feature film. His first is called The Hole in the Ground, and I haven't seen that one. Evil Dead Rise starts with a fun sequence where we meet a few characters staying at a house in the woods by a lake. One woman is possessed by the evil dead, and it's no surprise what happens next. She grabs her friend's hair by the ponytail, pulls it, and rips off the top of her head. The injured woman starts walking around afterwards. If you're thinking, well, that's not realistic, I'm skeptical that someone could just rip the top of someone's head off like that, then stop. It's just as ridiculous as some of the other things that have already happened in this series, and there's no need to be skeptical. After a cool opening title, we meet a guitar technician named Beth. She finds out she's pregnant, and she goes to visit her sister Ellie in Los Angeles. Ellie's husband left, and she has 3 kids named Danny, Bridget, and Cassie. Soon their apartment building is going to be torn down, so they will have to move. The kids go out to get pizza, and there's an earthquake when they return to the apartment building's parking garage. This creates director Lee Cronin's favorite thing ever. A fucking hole in the ground. Danny climbs down and finds a Necronomicon, aka a Book of the Dead, and some vinyl records, aka wax. He takes both of these back to their apartment. Obviously, they open the book and realize that something's off. Then Danny decides to play the records. When he does, the electricity goes out and he has to spin the record by hand. It's very smooth. Don't be surprised that the record doesn't ever skip, slow down, or speed up. It's a movie. It's fine. There's no reason to be skeptical that this would happen. What we do here is recordings of people reciting the passages from the book, and this summons the evil dead, which obviously start tormenting all the characters. There's a lot of good here. The movie is very stylish visually. It's got cool camera angles and shots, which create an off-kilter vibe, and it does a lot of neat things looking out through the apartment door's peephole. It's not scary, but there is some tension and a lot of dread because I knew things weren't going to end well. Much like the earlier movies and the 2013 one in particular, there are characters that don't die immediately. They get injured in horrible ways and live through it or get possessed and become deadites. I don't think this was quite as disgusting and visceral as the 2013 movie. There was only one time when I thought, holy shit, and that was when a deadite grabbed and then used a certain item as a weapon, aka that thing that was given away in the movie's trailer, which again, I didn't watch until after I already saw the movie. And don't get me wrong, this is an incredibly graphic and bloody film. It just didn't make me want to look away constantly. That isn't a bad thing by any means. I had just braced myself for worse than it really was. There are some things I didn't like about Evil Dead Rise. I didn't dislike them, but the characters are not very interesting. There are a few fun Easter eggs, one of which involves an eye. It's not the first movie in the series to do this, but of course, eyes don't really do that. So please, don't be skeptical. AKA the third part to this running joke. And also the third part to that running joke. There are also a couple lines of dialogue that are callbacks to the earlier films, and those just really fell flat for me. I wish they just didn't include them or had been a little less obvious about it. Something I noticed when I was writing this review is that the kids' names are, like I mentioned earlier, Danny, Bridget, and Cassie with a K. And if you reorder them, you get KDB. I think it would have been great if they had changed Danny's name to Nathan, so their initials could have been KNB, as a subtle nod to the effects group who worked on Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. The Deadite dialogue in Evil Dead Rise was also a mixed bag. Some of it was genuinely creepy and it felt like they put some effort into it. Then others are lazy and just the most generic ass insults you can imagine. And those are really weak. Initially, I was a little underwhelmed with the ending, but I like it more after thinking about it. Overall, I'm slightly let down by this movie. One comparison I can make is to that really old PC game Lemonade Stand. It's like the movie tried its best, sold a decent amount of lemonade, but wasn't completely raking in the money. And ultimately, it only earned enough to send the class on a field trip for half a day instead of an entire day. That's okay and all, but it could be better. I'm giving Evil Dead Rise a lot of credit for being fun, for never dragging, and for looking really good visually. But the characters aren't strong, some of the Easter eggs and dialogue don't work, and it never does anything really great. My first impression is that it's the weakest movie in the series, and right now I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Of these two movies I talked about, I like The French Dispatch more, but I'm way more likely to rewatch Evil Dead Rise first. As always, thanks for watching. My next video will be a movie and its sequel, so be on the lookout for that, and I hope to see you there.